but I saw Amber running towards me, crying. Amber! Amber, what's wrong? I asked, trying to calm my friend who was borderline hysterical. Stacy, she spoke before breaking out into another sob. I pulled her over to the sidewalk and sat down on the bench. Okay, Amber, you gotta calm down. You're starting to freak me out, I said, worried about my friend. Was she hurt? Did someone try to? No, she was okay. Stacy could take care of herself. I heard Amber sniffle a few times before she spoke again. Stacy is dead, Lisa. I could feel my whole body freeze up. The wind felt like it got sucked out of the atmosphere as I just stared at her, hoping that this was just some sick joke and that she would smile and laugh and say, "Gotcha!" But that never happened. And from the look in my friend's eyes, I knew she was telling the truth. How? I asked, my voice coming out as a whisper. My throat felt dry and burned, but I needed to know. Amber shook her head. I don't know. She was fine. And then she just started screaming and pointing, she stated before pausing. There was nothing there, Lisa. I looked and looked, but there was nothing. And then she just dropped, she finished. I could hear the knot that tried to stop her voice, but she swallowed it down. The security guard came when he heard the screaming, but by the time he got there, she was already gone, she told me, before looking at me. Her face showed that she was nothing but serious at this point, and what she said next made my insides crawl. Lisa, she has the word fool carved into her chest. What? That's crazy. You said no one... I started, but I was cut off. And that is true, Lisa. There was no one around us that could have done that without me seeing it. But there are people who came forward and said they saw it being carved by something invisible. I just stared at her, shocked, appalled, confused, and... The girl, I said quietly, as I thought back to the cloaked girl. That was the card that Stacy drew after all, the fool. I thought of her too, but there wasn't anyone around, Lisa, Amber stated. I nodded, not bothering to tell Amber about the whispers I heard in the alleyway. Where is she? I asked. The security station. They said they would call her parents. I told them that we had a friend in the crowd still, and they told me to come get you, she answered. I nodded and asked if she wanted to go back. She took a deep breath, let it out, then nodded and stood. We walked along the sidewalk towards where Amber said the station was, both of our faces covered with depression as we watched the crowd cheer on, unknowing of the death that just occurred. While I watched Amber turn the corner, I stopped for a moment. In amongst the crowd and loud music, I could hear something. A faint whispering. My eyes widened as I realized what it was, the same whispering that I had heard in the alleyway. I turned to find Amber, but She was nowhere in sight. My breath quickened as I raced down the street, pushing past shocked people. I couldn't see Amber anywhere, and my heart raced as I looked for her. Suddenly, an ear-piercing scream shattered the sky, and I raced towards its direction, already knowing the source. As I turned another corner, I tried to hold in the bile that rose in my throat. Amber lay on the ground, as if she had just fallen. Her eyes wide in fear, and the word cobbler was carved in her chest. Blood still poured from the fresh wounds. I turned away as the little bit of substance I had consumed earlier made its way up. I shook as I looked around for anyone, but the street was empty. I could hear the crowd still, but the street we were on now was completely abandoned. I turned on shaky legs to go back to the crowd to get help, but as I turned around, I felt my heart stop. In the middle of the street was the cloaked girl. We stared at each other, and only now did I realize that there was no longer any sound. Everything was eerily silent, except for the whispering. It was louder now, more concentrated. I watched as the girl held up a card, my card, and a twisted smile stretched across her face. I backed up, stopping when my foot hit something. I looked down to see Amber. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, my tears beginning to fall, but I looked back to the cloaked girl, who was now walking towards me. I turned and I ran. It was the only thing I could do. My legs wanted to give up, but I needed to keep going. The girl still walked at her slow pace, so I knew I could outrun her. I hoped. I ran to the parking area and found Stacy's car. Luckily, Stacy had given me her keys when she had bought her third beer, saying that she would be too drunk to drive. I slung open the door and raced out of there as fast as I could. I cried as I drove. My eyes blurred as I watched the road. My two best friends were gone. I didn't know how I would face their parents, what I would tell them, how I would live knowing that I left them. But what else could I do? What were you supposed to do in this kind of situation? I was only a few days over 21. I wasn't supposed to be dealing with things like this. Stacy wasn't. Amber wasn't. They were too young to... I felt the hot streaks run down my face faster as I thought of Amber's body. I'm sorry I couldn't save you guys. I drove and drove for what seemed like hours, but around 1 a.m, I finally reached my house. My parents weren't home. They both had night jobs, so I was alone. Something I wasn't sure if I was happy or scared about. I turned off the car and ran in the house, locking the doors behind me before making sure all the doors and windows were locked as well. I made my way into my room, and as I lay on my bed, I noticed my voice recorder on my nightstand. And so here I am, recording this whole story for you. I know she is still out there. I know she is coming for me. So, I wanted everyone to know what happened. To Stacy, to Amber, to me. Mom, Dad, I just wanted to say that I love you, even if I don't say it that often. To Stacy and Amber's family, I'm so sorry. If I would have told them the feeling I got from that girl. I'm sorry. I really don't know what else to say, so I will just end it here. Goodbye, everyone. Our top story today. A young girl was found dead in her home in Louisiana. The police say it was one of the most disturbing they had ever seen. She was found on her bed, and the word mystic carved into her chest. The autopsy revealed she had died of a heart attack, but police are on the lookout for a murder suspect after finding a tape the girl had recorded shortly before her death. More on the story at 6.